in 1978, things began happening to me that I didn't really understand, but I recognized that God was in it. So invitations began to come locally at first, Montgomery Church, and invitations began to come, and I began to keep those appointments and talk to people, Seventh-day Adventist people, about Daniel and Revelation. And of course, you have an audience in front of you, sometimes 200 or 300 people in front of you, and they already have preconceived opinions and ideas because that's what they've been taught. That's the way they've been taught for virtually all their lives. And I found myself trying to pull people from where they were further along in time, further along in prophecy, further along in an understanding. There are always those who resist and kick and buck and refuse. That's human nature. But there are always a few in the group, in the audience. There are always a few who begin to see. The light begins to break through, and they begin to see and understand that the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation have a much larger meaning, much larger revelation than what we have allowed them to have. And peer pressure is not an easy thing to deal with. Peer pressure, meaning the people who are your equals, or at least think they are your equals. And when they hear something that doesn't fit what they have been taught virtually all their lives, they resist, they kick, they buck, sometimes they get up and walk out. It was 1978, I think, for the first time I was sharing my conclusion, my new understanding of Daniel, and I began to talk about the ram and the he-goat in Daniel chapter 7. As I began to follow this, I brought up Iran. I said, the day is coming. Iran is going to do something, and it's going to anger the West, especially the United States, and I believe Great Britain will be in league with us when the time comes. But Iran is going to do something. The king of Persia is going to do something, and it will inflame matters in that part of the world. You can deduce that in Daniel chapter 7 because the ram is pushing south and pushing north and pushing west. The pushing is a warlike gesture. So I'm in Daniel chapter 7 for a minute, and I want to get you there, and let's look at 2 or 3 verses at the beginning of the chapter to get our feet into this discussion one more time. Daniel chapter 7. It's the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, that Daniel had this dream and visions. So Daniel chapter 7 is not a vision that was given to Belshazzar. It's not a dream that was given to someone else. This is a vision and a dream that was given to Daniel. The name Belshazzar tells us that this vision is given to Daniel all virtually at the end of the Babylonian Empire, because Belshazzar is the last king. He's of Babylon. He's the one that sees the handwriting on the wall. This day is your kingdom taken from you and divided, given to the Medes and the Persians. So I'm in verses 1, 2, and 3. It's the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, that Daniel had the dream and visions, and he wrote them down. And he wrote the dream, told the sum of the matters. In other words, he is describing in his writing down what it means as far as he's concerned and what he sees in his vision and dream. In verse 2, Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. So I want to pause right here and ask you, with your background in Adventist understanding of prophecy, prophetic things, when the four winds of heaven are striving, blowing stormy winds against the sea, what does that represent prophetically?
Strife, commotion.
Yes, yes. Where do we find that explanation? Where is Scripture for that explanation? You'll find it in Revelation 17. And the angel is speaking to John, not Daniel, but it's a follow-up on Daniel's visions. It's an enlargement on Daniel's visions. And the angel says, the winds are, the four winds of heaven are war and strife and trouble. That's where we are in verse 2. I saw in my vision by night the four winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. There's a fierce storm going on. It's not just a storm. We might call it a hurricane. Verse 3, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Now that's where we pause, because you're all familiar with what follows here. And that's good. You know, I've been several months trying to deal with this Parkinson's business. And it's really been difficult, not because I'm in physical pain, but because I'm in brain pain. I find it very difficult to use my memory bank the way I have used it all my life. I have a semi-photographic memory, but it ain't working very well right now. And so when I'm praying and talking to the Lord about it, I say, Lord, I don't understand. Maybe my work is done. Maybe my time is over, and if so, so be it. But I got to hear it straight from you. Yes, no, no maybes. I need a yes or a no. And so I've gone weeks and no answers, and months and no answers. And I keep praying, Lord, what is this all about? Well, something happened this past week that I believe has to do with answering this prayer. Because when your memory doesn't work very well, you have to go back into the book. And so I have been back in the book, and I've been looking, and I've been asking, and I've been digging. First, to jog my memory, but secondly, to see if there's something I have missed. So verse 3, I want you to look at it, because I'm going to show you something that I have missed, and I've been at this 45 to 50 plus years. Verse 3, four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse or different, one from another. Now the first one was like a lion. So look at your little chart here. Let's get the picture, the visual image here, because that's what we're talking about. The image, and then we come to Daniel 7, right here. The first beast of four was like a lion with eagle's wings. Now we know that historically, the lion with eagle's wings represented Babylon. That's what zillions of people believe and still believe. In the context of the time of the end, Babylon is not here except in spiritual Babylon. So there's a lion, and there's a bear, and there's a leopard. But there are four beasts. The fourth beast is the New World Order, the time of the end beast. Different, it says, than all the others. So I want you to look at this for a moment. I want you to get the picture in your mind, because I'm going to change the picture. Not this one, but the same picture. And I think you'll be as surprised as I was when I finally hit upon it. I believe the Lord showed it to me. I believe that something is going on prophetically in this world, that the time has come to understand this. So all I want to reinforce with you is that there are four great beasts. First is a lion with eagle's wings. The second is a bear with 3 ribs in his mouth, and he's raised up in fighting posture. The third one is a beast that is flying swiftly, moving swiftly, and he has 4 wings to help him move swiftly, and he has 4 heads. And he seems to be moving to take control. The beast follows, this New World Order beast, and we haven't been able to say, well, that's this person and this time and this event. We have not been able to do that. We simply know that there's something about the lion, the bear, and the leopard that is going to result in the 4th beast. Verse 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard. That's China on our chart. And verse 7, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful, terrible, strong exceedingly. And it had iron teeth. Have we come across iron anywhere in Daniel? Yes, we have. Iron and brass band around the stump of the great tree. Had great iron teeth that devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. It was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And all the beasts that were before it, the lion, the bear, and the leopard. Whatever this 4th beast is, he is a consequence of something that is happening and being described, pictured here in Daniel 7. Ellen White recognized one of these principles of prophetic interpretation that I shared for several years. Need to do it again. The when-then principle. Ellen White uses the when-then principle. So does Jesus. And Jesus uses the when-then principle in his discussion with the disciples of the signs of the end. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Here's an explanation, and it's large. When you see this, you can know that it's near, that the time is near, even at the doors. As a matter of fact, by the time you get to verse 8 in Matthew 24, it says, all these signs that we're going to talk about here in a minute, all these signs say that it's the time of sorrows has come. So something is ahead for the people of Scripture, the people of the book, the people of God. Something is ahead when this lion is humbled and this bear rises and this leopard moves swiftly to a position of power. Lion, bear, leopard, 4th beast, diverse. Now I want you to go to Revelation 13. We're going to meet all these guys again, but you're going to be surprised. Revelation 13. Chapter 13. The famous beast chapter. So John says something very similar to what Daniel said. 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. Here we are. Here's the sea again. I stood upon the sand of the sea. Verse 1, I saw a beast rising out of the sea. A beast singular. A beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. On his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads the name or names of blasphemy. Now the beast which I saw, singular, the beast which I saw, singular, was like unto a leopard. His feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. Now, where did those ingredients come from? It starts in Daniel with lion, bear, and leopard, and beast. In Revelation, it starts with beast, and leopard, and bear, and lion last. Something has happened to reverse the order. So let me do this on the board, get a visual image. One, two, three, four. When we get over here to Revelation 13, this whole picture is changed. The beast becomes number one, not number four. The leopard becomes number one, the bear still in the number two, and the lion as the last. 50 years I've been at this, 40 plus easily, and I've never seen that. I can quote all the verses, but I have never seen the order reversed. And I'm trying to understand what that means. So let's do a little math in Daniel. Maybe we can get some ideas. They may not be kosher, but we may get some ideas. So Daniel, in Daniel 7, has this vision. And then a second vision follows in chapter 8 of Daniel. If you want to turn there, you can, but we shall be reminded that 2,300 days can be divided into two parts, 1,260, because Daniel 8 is about the 1,260. But there's 2,300. And in chapter 7 and chapter 8, the 2,300 goes something like this: unto 2,300 evening morning, that's days in Hebrew, Aramaic. Unto 2,300 evening morning, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And that's what we were talking about in the Sabbath school lesson this morning. We have a high priest, and he's there to cleanse us of all of our sins. And in Daniel, this picture is much larger than you or me. Much larger. Dr. Cottrell is the one who confirmed in my own thinking, my own thinking and study, I saw that Daniel 7:14, is it 7 or 8? 7:14, that cleansing the sanctuary, 8:14, cleansing the sanctuary was the sanctuary in heaven. That's the Adventist position. A lot of Christians believe it's talking about the sanctuary in heaven. The Adventists had a little different take on that. They said it's in heaven, but it starts in October 22 of 1844. And the reason the Adventists have held so dearly and tightly to this position of October 1844 is because that's when we were born, and if it's not, then we're not important. We're not important in God's plan. We're not important to God. We're not important, period. So we begin to focus with ourselves at the center. That's what almost every religious entity does in time, space, and history, and whatever. We are the one. We are the important one. And when you get self at the center of the universe, it's for certain you're not number one. just not number one. So what I began to see is that the 2300 can be divided in the rest of Daniel and Revelation, can be divided into two parts. There's 1260 days. There's 3.5 years, there's 40 and 2 months. And this is the time granted to the two witnesses. And who are the two witnesses? Moses and Elijah. That's Bible. And what are they going to do? Why are they coming? What is their purpose in coming? And they are coming to announce to the whole world that the day of reckoning is at hand. Fear God and give glory to Him. The hour of His judgment is come. And we focused on us at that, and we should not have. The focus was not on us. The focus was upon the high priest, Jesus, in heaven, when this time comes. And He, because of circumstance and because of wisdom that God alone possesses, knows that the time has come to blot out sins. Whose sins? The sins of the world. Anybody and everybody who has lived and come and gone, and anybody who is alive, especially those who are alive when this time comes. Something happens at the end of the 1260 days, 3.5 years, 40 and 2 months. The book of Daniel explains it, chapter 10, chapter 11 of Revelation, that these two witnesses are going to prophesy for 3.5 years in Jerusalem. And they're going to preach a message that is going to go to the whole world. But something happens after the 3.5 years that God grants them. Something happens. And a beast rises up out of the bottomless pit. A beast rises up out of the bottomless pit and makes war against these two witnesses and overcomes them and kills them. And how does he kill them? He makes fire come down, lightning come down out of heaven and strikes them dead. Ellen White says this is an overwhelming delusion. Overwhelming delusion. What is a delusion? Tell me, give me a 1-word or 10-word definition for delusion.
That take people by storm.
You have, they have, someone has believed something that is not what? True or correct. And if it's a delusion, it's intended to do what?
Deceive.
Yes, to draw people away from what's really taking place, and what's really taking place is going on up there when Jesus is ready to stand up and declare, it's done. These 1260 days begin with a flyby. Why is that? Because God says and announces in Daniel, and I think in Revelation, that He's going to change the times. The 1,040 days plus 1,260 days is 2,300 days. The thing about the 1,040 days is that a year is 365 and a quarter days per year, but this one is 360 days. 360 days. So there's a change. What is going to be the purpose and meaning of the change? Well, we've got the Exodus to show us, give us a roadmap, tell us where this is going to go. If there is indeed a flyby in the heavens, then it can begin the march to the kingdom, just the way it was promised by Moses back there in Egypt. We're going to leave here, we're going to march, and we're going to go to the promised land. Now we know in the book it didn't work out. Was God surprised it didn't work out? No, I don't think so. I think God knew that it would not work out, not because it was an evil plan, but because sin distorts, sin confuses, sin changes. And so if we look at Passover again, now the sanctuary times begin to make sense. There's a close of probation. That's when the high priest stands up and announces and pronounces it's done. What is it that's done? Now, this is my view, and I want to qualify it and tell you it's my view. I believe that at the instant of creation, everything in the universe that we're part of was fixed. I don't believe there was anything following that moment, that instant of creation, God speaking, pronouncing. I don't believe there was anything that has since taken God by surprise or ever will take God by surprise. He knows the end from the beginning, and he says, this is how I can prove to you that I am the true God, because I can tell you the end from the beginning. If he can tell you the end from the beginning, he had to know the end from the beginning. God is not being taken by surprise. We may be, zillions may be, but not God. God knows, according to the laws of creation, that time is granted at creation. In the commands of God, time is granted. Now, if sin had not come into this picture, you and I would have been born at whatever time, under much better circumstances than we find ourselves in now. But it didn't happen that way. At the flood, Ellen White says that even the devil thought his time had come. Whatever the flood was and whatever caused the flood, I believe it was a near miss or a hit and a near miss by objects in the heavens that brought the flood of waters upon the earth. Now the question is, did God step into the picture? And I believe he did. How did God step into the picture to save human beings from being wiped out on the planet at the time of the flood? God called a man. God said, and he called Noah. And he gave Noah instructions. If Noah hadn't followed the instructions, you and I wouldn't be here. Right. I believe that this earth has faced 2 or 3 major disasters in past or prophetic history or ancient history, whatever you want to say. I believe we have faced virtual destruction of all life on the planet, but God has stepped in. As best we can reason, between 400 and 500 years after the flood, there was a follow-up event, cosmic event, in the days of Peleg, and whatever that cosmic event was, some object with a mass great enough to come near the earth divided the continents by earthquake. The end of time is when the next or the last object comes, and this one that's coming is going to devastate the surface of the earth, all living things on the earth. And unless God comes before the time and at the time, and unless God totally intervenes in behalf of living things on this rock, nothing is going to survive. But Jesus comes and calls, shouts from heaven, and there is a resurrection that begins to take place. Now, if I'm not in that first resurrection, if I'm not in it in the first resurrection, that means I'm going to be asleep, dead, knowing nothing until the 1,000 years are past. So will I know that I'm lost? I may say yes to that if I see Jesus coming and I hear voices that Ellen White describes that will be heard in the heavens, too late, too late, too late. That would be a fearful thing to hear and still be alive, even if it's only for a few more hours or a few more days. It's not something you want to hear. Certainly, I don't want to hear it. But if I'm killed by events taking place in this final prophetic time, if I die in here and I'm lost, I'm not going to know of the passage of time. I will not know anything or anybody, and won't read any clock or calendar until the 1,000 years have passed. The next thing I'm going to know when I wake up is, there's the city, there's people I recognize inside the city, and I'm outside. I don't want to hear that, don't want to see that, don't want to plan for that. What happens on day 1260 according to Daniel in Revelation? Something happens on day 1260. What is it? And when they shall have finished their testimony, that's the two witnesses, a beast out of the bottomless pit, which I believe is Satan himself, is going to come and say, I am God, these are evil witnesses, and I will prove it to you. And he makes fire come down out of heaven. It says 2 or 3 times in Revelation, he has the power to deceive the nations. So why would he specifically want to murder the two witnesses? Because they are preaching to the whole world against Satan. They are unmasking Satan. And so his plan, his will, is to get rid of them. Now, I submit to you that when Ellen White talks about a close of probation, I don't think she understands that it's day 1260. It doesn't matter. There's something that happens right here when the two witnesses are put to death. You can read about it in Revelation 10 and 11. The two witnesses are put to death. Now, what is this thing about two witnesses? Two witnesses are not supposed to be put to death. They are supposed to make a decision, reveal evidence that will put the guilty to death. Not the witnesses, but the guilty. So Satan is going to turn the Word of God backward. He's going to twist it. He's going to turn it into, you are liars and I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to make fire come down out of heaven. And you, Elijah, you know better. You know what the story was. The story was Elijah prayed and fire came down and the wicked were destroyed. So the fire is going to be reversed this time in prophecy. Ellen White says this is an overwhelming or overmastering delusion. And I can see that. I don't have any difficulty with that at all. This beast that was described as number 4 in Daniel becomes number 1. I saw a beast rise up out of the sea. He had. So the beast down here in Daniel becomes the beast up here in Revelation. What does that mean? It means that the beast is going to make an image to the first beast. This is the first beast. He's not going to invent a new beast. He's going to make an image to the first one, and power is going to be given, it says. Authority and power is going, and he is going to receive power from the beast in Revelation 12. So I want to talk about you and me and where we might be right now. Sometime in the summer of 1974, I had received a call to come into the canvassing work, and I prayed about the matter, and the Lord said, yes, this is what I want you to do. So I had to become a canvasser and all that meant at the time. So I had to get a case to carry my sample books and my accordions to spread out and order blanks and all these things. I had to have a case. And so what I did was work to arrange my books and the various things that I wanted to show to the people. I would rearrange my case and I would try something else. And Stephanie was 5 years old at the time. And that means she was about this tall. And my bookcase was this tall. And she would stand around and she would watch me take the books out, put them in, rearrange. And it turns out that I had an extra case, and quite a few times while I'm out canvassing, gone working, doing whatever, she has decided to make her own case and give canvases. Imitation. Well, on this particular occasion, Judy and I and Stephanie were there. I don't know if it was breakfast time or closer to the noon time. I think it was in the morning very early because I was going to get ready and go out and canvass. And I had put my books, arranged my books in the case and what have you. And so we knelt down, all three of us, me, Judy, and 5-year-old Stephanie. We knelt down and said, Lord, we want you to show us how to get more books out. Show us how to get more books out. Well, that prayer is still working, still at work. And 50+ million books is no small thing. No small thing. I think it's small compared to what is about to happen. But I can tell you it has cost $1 million+ a year to operate the ministry, print books, and get them out. Whether we send people across the waters or whatever. It's cost $1 million+ a year on average now. Since 1980 till now is how many years? 38 years? Is that right? 38 years. So at least $38 million have come and gone through this ministry to print books. And probably more than that. I don't keep up with it. But I just know that it's a costly endeavor to print books and ship them all over the world. It's costly. So here we are, 38+ years down the road, and we believe that there's a large work yet to be done. If I read Ellen White correctly, and if I have any understanding of history correctly, there's a large work yet to be done. And I've always watched and learned and prayed, Lord, send the right people, your people, at the right time, and send the means. And how many times we have seen God work a miracle to dollars, like Simeon's testimony here. Just I need, I'm at the bank, just the funds that I need, I just got back in my income tax. Just what I need. No. What God could foresee and intend and prepare and do. Before you call, I will answer. I believe there are answers coming our direction. Our meaning this ministry. I believe there are answers coming this direction. And it's very difficult for me to wait and wait and wait and wait. And I complain and I tell the Lord I'm not happy at all. Because just at the time we may have the means and the opportunity to do this work, I'm being pressed down. I'm being pushed down. I'm being troubled by the enemy. And my wife, we've been under attack. Judy and I have been under attack for a long time, but it's gotten personal now. And the enemy is trying to stop us. Well, the work can go on without us, but for some reason, God has not moved us out of the picture. And I'm wondering what this global currency reset is all about, and I believe that's exactly what Ellen White was talking about in Testimonies to Ministers. There will be a change in the circulating currency. It is not of the devising of God. It is one of Satan's deceptions for the last days. Now, this is where I want to get to your head and your heart. If we see a change in the circulating currency, what time can we know has come? The last what? The last days. That's when this is going to be. That's when it's going to take place. I believe it's in the works for many reasons that I don't need to get into. But I believe this is on the way. We're not in early spring now. We're in springtime, but going into summer. And if anything was going to happen or is going to happen with regards to where we would be here 1,040 days before Passover, if you count the days and check it out on the calendar, it's exactly where it should be. There's going to be a fall of the year event. And I don't want the war with Iran because I know it's a trigger event. Triggering what? It's going to trigger the time of the end. And Jesus himself, after identifying the signs of the time of the end, says all these are the beginnings of sorrows. So I'm going to do my thing here, tell you that it's my thing, what I believe. In the fall of this year, and if it doesn't happen in the fall, doesn't mean it'll never happen. It just means my guesswork is not exactly correct yet. But in the fall of this year, we could have the ram versus the goat. Now here's the question. Think about it and give me an answer. If the ram pushes and does something to really anger the West, the goat from the West, what is the response in the book of Daniel of the goat from the West to what the ram is doing? What does it say? He was moved with choler. He's fiercely angry, it says. He's moved with choler against the ram. And he throws him down and stamps on him and breaks both his horns. Now what you and I need to know, and almost nobody understands, is that there is a new arrangement between Iran and Iraq. And Iran is asking Iraq, no, they're not asking, they're just marching in with hundreds of thousands of armed soldiers and equipment, guns, weapons. They're marching into Iraq. And they are trying to take Syria entirely and control Syria, Iraq, Iran. And if they do, they will control from the Straits of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf all the way across to the Atlantic and the North Atlantic. And that's why Russia wants to be on the side of Iran and Syria and these people. They want to control a large portion of important part of the world. And they are threatening. So if this happens, let's just take a guess. If something happens in the fall of this year, then very suddenly, very quickly, if not at the moment of, and that would be the moment of here. That would be the moment off here. At that time, Russia should make a move. And it should be pictured as in Daniel. I saw a bear raise himself up on one side, and he had 3 ribs in the mouth. Now, if you don't know history, if you don't know geography, if you don't know topography, then you're probably not going to understand why Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania could very well represent the 3 ribs in the mouth of the bear. If you know history, you understand that this is where Russia's navy was based in warm enough waters to move all year round. And Russia wants Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania back in her camp. Now, these 3 little countries hold a very important position strategically for the West. And Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania have already voted. They have taken a vote from their citizens in each of these countries, and they all want to come out from under communist domination, Russian rule and control, and they want to be in part of NATO in the West. Now, this is today's history. This is exactly what's going on. It is possible that before this year is over, we're going to see. Now, I'm going to ask Ellen White how to put this together. She uses exactly the words of Jesus when he says all these are the beginnings of sorrows, famine, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places, etc. She uses exactly the words of Jesus. And then she adds, fire, flood, earthquake with war and bloodshed. And I believe this is exactly the time and place, right here. And if it happens, something is going to bring the lion with eagle's wings down. Something is going to humble. Something is going to reduce the king of beasts to number 3 position instead of number 1. So there's first world, second world, and third world. We are about to become third world. Whatever that means, none of us can even begin to understand what that means. The most powerful and the richest nation ever in the history of mankind, and we're about to be reduced to ruin, financial ruin. We're already social and moral ruined.